Oh, okay.
From now it's 30.
Yeah, we're gonna beat y'all to death with that beat. Welcome to the February 21st meeting of the Rotary Club of South Jacksonville. It's a great day to be a member of Rotary. We ask that you silence your phone and conversations, and if you're attending on Zoom, we welcome you also and ask that you mute yourself. My thanks to Cole Shad for welcoming our guests today. One step closer to the regular badge. I'd like to invite Mary Alice Dalen up to lead our pledge and prayer.
Thank you. Start with there's the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh God, oh heavenly creator, help us to love our family and friends, to treat our employees and fellow workers fairly, to seek justice, to help those in need, to be the best that we can be. That the people in Eastern Europe, in particular Ukraine, may have a happy ending to the war that's going on, and may we live by the four-way test. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mary Alice. We have some guests here today. Robert Harris, would you please introduce your guests?
Get my two children to both stand up. They've been coming for many years. Like many of the folks in the room, I have a substantial investment in bowls. And I honor Mr. Hodges by the being here. I have a 9th grader and 11th grader, 2 young men that are there now. I have 3 older ones that attended, one that's not here. But Vanessa is just moved back to town. Is a lawyer, 12 years, Vanderbilt law school on a scholarship. Obviously, I'm not the father. 3 children and a husband have all moved back in the last 6 months, so we're thrilled to have it. He does math sports. Chase has moved back, lives in town, came back early on. His wife is also a lawyer with Florida Blue, basically the state attorney's office for 4 years. And has been with us for 5 years, with 2 beautiful little boys at home, and has been pretty much managing our practice, doing personal injury work and commercial engagement.
All right, welcome. And Julia Kalinsky, you have a couple of guests.
Thank you. So first I have Sergey Besenko. He's a member of the Mandarin Rotary Club. He is also from Kiev, Ukraine, and he is the 1980 Olympic gold medalist in the Soviet Union. And he is also helping coach the #1 swimming program in the country at the Bold School. And we also have Mr. Tyler Hodges, president of the Penn School of the Bold School, and we will have more introductions later. These are speakers.
It's brilliant. I'd like to give some special recognition to someone we haven't seen in a while, past President Dick Morelli.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. We miss you, buddy. We miss you. All right. Couple of special announcements. As always, please review the DAC TV calendar regularly to learn about our upcoming meeting, speakers, and social events. As a reminder, we will be having our monthly board meeting immediately following today's meeting. So at this point, let me hear from Bill Traer, Paul Harris moment.
I see my protege has done well in my absence. I trained it. It's a lot of work. This is our 20th episode. We're starting. For that. At the conclusion of the 1910th convention, the first convention they had, the stage was set for Rotary to advance. And you remember in the last episode, they spread, the initial spread was out to the West Coast, and we got 3 or 4 chapters started on the West Coast, starting with San Francisco. Paul Harris and Ches Perry were chosen to lead the new National Association in a quest to establish Rotary clubs in other communities. The 2 men had their agreements and disagreements, but they still managed to work together, and they were instrumental in picking up at least a dozen new units across the nation. And they did. There's a lot in the book about them sparring with each other, but they were both very instrumental in getting it going. To some, it appeared that the expansion was happening on its own. But in the beginning, Rotary was still not known outside of a small group. Many of the later clubs started because one friend knew another in an adjacent community, or by networks of business associates or former associates. There were even undetected clubs established and operating for months before becoming known to the National Association. This free-spirited spread led to some misunderstandings and some interesting challenges. Paul learned this lesson the hard way. It hadn't been long since for Homer Wood's independent decision to call his creation, this was the first guy that went to San Francisco, he happened to call it the Rotary Club of San Francisco. The title could have been anything. He could have used another name, but he chose Rotary. There was no copyright or other protection on the name Rotary. In Los Angeles, this issue did become a problem. An unscrupulous businessman, Herbert C. Quick, which I find just a perfect name for an unscrupulous businessman, chartered the Los Angeles Club in 1909. He spent his time calling businessmen, promising him that for a $5 initiation fee, they would be welcome to an exclusive business club, and he split the fee with himself and the club. So he took a commission. His personal problems eventually became public, and he was dismissed from the club. But he was persistent, so he formed another competing Rotary club in Los Angeles, issuing to himself a partner. Members of the new club were called brothers. The 3 partners soon were doing quite well soliciting members for a commission. Unfortunately for Mr. Quick, his financial problems again surfaced and he was dismissed. Following his departure, a new secretary, R.H. Nix, became the shareholder. But the club members were fed up with him also. So they kidnapped him, 2 brothers kidnapped him, and they locked him in a hotel room until he was, quote, convinced to sell his shares for a low price. The brothers' instructions were to, quote, take him apart to see what makes him tick. I can't make this stuff up. Finally, the president of the 2 Los Angeles clubs met. It was actually, the club thought it was going to be a joke. They were going to put these 2 guys together and they would start squabbling and fighting with each other. They met at lunch and they quickly got to be friends, decided to merge the clubs, and the new club would come under the authority of the National Association of Rotary Clubs based in Chicago. That didn't end the problems with unsanctioned and for-profit clubs. Public scrutiny also increased. So in March 1908, Paul was invited to speak at the Franklin Club, which is a club dedicated to the printing business. Over 400 people attended. Unfortunately, a quote, Miss Tightville Examiner, unquote, AKA Miss Genevieve DeForest, began to entertain the crowd with a risque show, singing alluring and sexually explicit songs and suggestive dancing. Several of the gentlemen attending enjoyed it a lot, but the press attending did not. Paul knew that Rotary must avoid this type of damaging press coverage, and this might have furthered his push for involvement in civic matters. Remember, the big battle here was business networking versus civic involvement. Early clubs responded, taking active positions on various issues of the day, including tariff reform, better roads, anti-gambling, better healthcare. The battle for the goals of Rotary between business exchange and civic involvement continued. Paul quickly realized that Rotary was experiencing more business in small communities than in large cities such as Chicago and San Francisco. Small town businessmen saw Rotary as an exclusive business club that would become dominant to the detriment of the community's non-Rotary members. The use of the Rotary wheel as a trademark on the business premises and on products was controversial, and in some metropolis, non-Rotarian community leaders urged boycott of Rotary members. Paul encountered this issue while attempting to spread Rotary to Minneapolis. The Chamber of Commerce felt Rotary was infringing on their domain. Only after letters from the mayor of Chicago and other leading citizens from both communities did Minneapolis Rotarians convince the chamber that they posed no threat to them. However, no matter what he did to stress the fellowship and civic audit involvement, Rotary was still thought of as a secret society limited to members of the mercantile class with the goal of profit making and market manipulation. Well, this was a legitimate problem, and eventually that changed. So next week, I'm going to go into the second national convention and the birth of the Rotary motto, which you're going to be surprised at what it really means.
Thank you. Now let me recognize Julia Polinsky for Family of Rotary.
Okay, we have a couple of birthdays. Actually, today is past President Odette Stroit's birthday, so happy birthday. Past President Leslie Red is February 25th birthday. And then Kyle Peters got an anniversary in a couple days, so you're prepared. Okay, you're welcome. And then I just heard that Katie got married earlier in February, so big congratulations to Katie. Sorry. I know my timing.
Thank you, Julia. So let me, what did you put on the mic? Yeah, that makes it. All right, we got to start over, right?
I'll be there in a second.
Not on your line. Let me recognize Lisa Marie for our fun time.
I'm gonna leave that alone there. All right, so we're doing happy dollars today. I did mention we're doing happy dollars today, right? All right. All right, I'm gonna get us started with our happy dollars and let everybody know. Did you have a question or you want to offer?
I want to offer.
You offer first.
I'm very happy because I just celebrated a rather landmark birthday. I had a wonderful time partying with friends and then a party with 15 members of my family, including 2 sons and 2 daughters, and a grandson and a granddaughter and all, and their spouses. And we had a wonderful time, went to the symphony. And I'm going to tell you, you probably wonder which birthday
Yes.
is on.
Yeah.
It's one word celebrating. It's number 90.
can't compete with that. Who's going next? I mean, I got $5, but all right, Barry, you're gonna try. Wow.
Yeah, I'm happy, that my neighbor right next door to me here is still vertical. And looking good.
Amen.
And the Godfather is here today. That's always a thrill when he shows up. And I'm especially happy that my wife is as organized as she is. She is, as we speak, she's still working on lodging in New Zealand. Because we're gonna go to the RI convention in Melbourne, Australia.
Wow.
And, hit New Zealand first. So she describes all these places to me, and as my eyes glaze over, I have to go lie down and rest and think about it.
Or hopefully you're seeing dollar signs.
Lots of them, yeah.
Oh, Mary Alice.
I'm happy just because it's Tuesday.
All right, well, happy Tuesday. Goodness gracious, so happy Tuesday.
So I'm happy, Mr. Morales, Mr. Ennis, and I just got back from Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and we did not get arrested.
Stick to that story.
I'm happy because, my son made his, D1 college baseball debut this weekend where we played for Auburn. And he did a first debut on Friday night, pitched 3 innings, JR.
Where are you going?
Annie, all right. Well, any more? Last one then. I'm happy. My daughter is playing high school lacrosse. She made the varsity team and she plays tonight. So happy for that.
Yay.
And so our little twist to Happy Dollars is the person who donated the largest happiness actually gets to go home with this wonderful bottle that was donated by Mr. Barry himself.
Rare.
Very rare from
Wine.
Germany, right? It is a fall wine, kind of like a Glühwein, for those of you familiar with the German practice of warmer wines. So, Dr. Webb, happy birthday. President Charlie, back over to you. Bucket and go home.
Gosh, no rest in Mardi Gras. Somebody's leading a charmed life. One message from our Rotary District: as you may know, the district requires that any club that seeks a district grant have 2 members of the league club attend a training seminar to qualify for a grant. This year's training will be held at Beachside High School in St. John's on Saturday, March 25th. There's 2 sessions. First at 9:45 in the morning and the second at 11 a.m. Now, I intend on attending myself, but through a misfortune in scheduling, our grants chair for this year will be out of town and cannot attend. So I'm looking for an additional volunteer who wishes to enter the exciting world of district mission. If you're interested and have a spare morning on the 25th, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll come searching for people. Very good. All right. I'll get with you, Bernie, and get you registered. All right. All right. I think, okay. You recognize Julia Kalinsky to, again, 3rd time up. For introduction of our speaker.
Well, it is my honor today to introduce Mr. Tyler Hodges, who is the 9th president and head of school, Gold School. Tyler was appointed head of school in February of 2018. His strengths in independent school leadership, compassion, and community building were standout in his appointment. Now, well into his 5th year at Olds as Olds' top administrator, Tyler is a supportive leader, building community momentum and growth in all areas of school life. His head of school role caps a long and vibrant educational career that includes 20 years as a teacher and administrator at some of the country's top independent schools in Virginia and California. He also currently serves as the board on the board of the Florida Council of Independent Schools. Tyler received his Master's of Education in Administration, Planning, and Social Policy from Harvard University Graduate School of Education. He has a Master's of Arts in Diplomatic and Military History from Temple University, a Bachelor's of Arts in History with a minor in Foreign Affairs from the University of Virginia, Tyler is an avid reader and loves a variety of sports, and he also enjoys spending time with his family, his wife Tristan, and two lovely daughters, Madeline, class of 2024, Colts, and Hannah, class of 2027. So please welcome Tyler Hodges.
Well, two things I've learned today. One, always get introduced by somebody who works for you because they're going to say extra nice things. Well, and on that, don't applaud before you've heard any of the remarks. I tell the seniors that all the time. You don't know what I'm going to say. And then the second thing is, in typical Bowls fashion, I am sitting at a table once again with someone who's won a gold medal in the Olympics. It is always intimidating to be surrounded by people that have achieved at that level. When you think you've done a pretty good job in your life, and then you realize that somebody's done it far better than you have. So he's actually the one that should be up here speaking to you today. But I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Julia for extending the invitation, to Les, President. Really, these are special times, and I love standing before people in Jacksonville and talking about the future of education. And so I'm going to do that just briefly, give you a little bit of an update on what we're doing at Bowls, but then really I welcome any questions that you might have for where we're going in this amazing city that we have. So just a quick bio. As Julia said, I'm privileged to be the 9th head of school. I am originally from Hickory, North Carolina. My parents still live there. My wife is from Houston. And I will tell you that when we were living in Santa Barbara, California, despite the criticism that we had for the rent, we love the weather and we love the food. It has gotten a little crazier since we've been there. But we never thought that we would live in Florida. It wasn't on our list. I don't know if any of you have ever been, had those conversations with your spouses, but, we had taken a map of the country and we were sort of looking around as I was progressing up through the ranks of various schools, pursuing opportunities. And Florida just wasn't on our list. And my wife actually, if she was here, she would validate this. But about 3 months before the prior head of school, Dave Ferrace, called me just out of the blue. She had been talking with some of our friends who had actually moved from California to Florida, and she had said, who in their right mind would ever move to Florida? Well, don't ever do that, because that, as we've learned, is going to send you exactly where you don't think you're going to end up. But it was a unique situation. Dave and I did not know each other, but we had mutual friends. He was looking for a number 2 at Bowls upon his appointment as the head of school, and he called me out of the blue. And for whatever reason that day, I can still remember, it was a Friday, and I was on my way to a student assembly. I was the head of upper school at a private school in Santa Barbara at that time, and I picked up. And he just said, hey, my name's Dave Ferrace. We don't know each other. Got an opportunity that I think you might be interested in. He gave me the bare bones. He said, we're not going to talk about it. No questions right now. Think about it. Talk about it over the weekend with your wife. And then if you're interested, we'll talk next week. And so my wife and I had a lunch set up that very day at one of our favorite restaurants in Santa Barbara. It's a little sandwich place. It's called Fresco. It's outside. It's wonderful. And I said, the funny thing is this guy I've never met called me today. And she's like, oh gosh, she's been with me long enough to know that usually impends or, means that there's an impending move. And I said, yeah, he's from Jacksonville, Florida. And she was like, what? She was like, I don't think I can do it. And I was like, well, hold on. We haven't even done it yet. I came to find out she didn't know where Jacksonville was. She thought Jacksonville was either right by Disney or was down in South Florida. So no problem with either one, but that's not exactly where we're going to choose to live. And I said, no. Rest assured, it's actually way more like Southern Georgia than it is like South Florida. She said, okay, good. All right, I can do that. And so we started talking, and lo and behold, I ended up, and I told Dave I would come for 3 years, and then he was going to help me find my next head job. And he did, because he is a graduate of the McDonough School up in Baltimore, and that headship opened up suddenly, and he was selected to take that one. And then after a bit of time and talking, and probably some help behind the scenes from Mr. Morales here, I was privileged to be extended the offer to be the head of school at Bowls. And it's been an amazing experience for me. It's been second to being a parent. It's the hardest thing I've ever done and the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I think that a lot of that comes from, I had basically a year and a half to get my legs under me before we went into COVID. And COVID, as many of you know, was a tremendous disruptor of our lives, of education, but at the same time, it was also an accelerator. And so one of the good things, and I'm not downplaying the negative consequences of the COVID experience, but it actually forced us, and I mean all schools, but Bowles in particular, forced us to do some things that we had been talking about doing for a long period of time. The online opportunities, reprioritization of what we valued, looking at work-life balance, and I mean that for students as well too. I talk with them all the time that going to school at Bowles is their current job, and so helped us sort of reconfigure what we were doing. And we're really proud, as I think all of the schools in Jacksonville should be, really proud of how we weathered that here. I have colleagues all over the country, and most of them were not given the opportunity to make the decisions that were best for their school communities. And I look back now, and I am a person of faith, and I do believe that everything happens for a reason. And when my wife and I reflect on the fact that we weren't really excited or sure about going to Jacksonville, and that was back then before we knew any of this stuff that was coming. I'm so privileged that I went through something like COVID, which I never want to go through again, but I did it in the state of Florida. I did it in Jacksonville. And for most intents and purposes, we were given the opportunity to do what we needed to do as educators. And that was, we were only closed for that spring fourth quarter. Everybody was online. I think everybody remembers that. And then I remember Zooming with my team during the summer. And we said, what is our core, most important thing that we need to accomplish? And universally, it was, we need the students to be back in the classrooms in person with their teachers. And so then everything that we did, we based on that premise. And, we were not perfect, and we certainly made some mistakes, but overall, I think that we accomplished that. And that ties into what I'm seeing currently with what we're seeing educationally. And so obviously, unless you've been under a rock or on an extended vacation somewhere, which some of you might have been doing, we're seeing a lot of anxiety, and it's anxiety not just with our students, but with our faculty and staff. We are seeing a breakdown of the civil discourse, the ability to have civil discourse, and I think that is impacting our educational classrooms. We're seeing people in the Bowles community and probably everywhere to find meaning with their lives, to find happiness and joy. And I don't know about you, I didn't love every moment of when I was growing up going to public school in North Carolina, but I certainly had more days than not where I was happy and joyful, and it was not under the intense pressure and seriousness that I think our students struggle with each and every day. Even our young kids, they are hyper aware of what is going on and what we're talking about and the anxiousness that we have. And then more importantly, and it's something that I've been working with the Florida Council for Independent Schools on, is you may or may not know this, but we're facing a real shortage of teachers. And that's public, private, everything. And so that is something that at Bowles we're really trying to focus on, is how can we pull in the best of the best? That's what we want. Every school wants that. Whether you're Adam Green at Episcopal or Todd Orlando at BK, you want the best of the best teaching your students, and we're all competing for a dwindling supply. So if there's one thing, and I started as a history teacher, so you're going to get some homework. Here's your homework assignment. I need you, when you're talking with the young people that you come into contact with, that you might be mentoring, that might be your children, your grandchildren, if they have any inclination into going into teaching, encourage them to do so. They can study education and study whatever else they want to when they're at university, be it engineering, medicine, but having a little bit of that understanding of what it means to be teaching will help people like me, because some of them will decide to go into this honorable profession. But it's not all doom and gloom. I don't want to leave you with that at all. We can and we are addressing each of those, whether it's the student anxiety, the teacher shortage, the breakdown of civil discourse, all of that. We're working diligently on, and I want to say I'm speaking on behalf of Bowles at this point, but I really do feel that it is very important. The wonderful city of Jacksonville and its environs, we have to have as many amazing schools as we can. Bowles is not equipped, and we can't teach every kid. We're not designed to do that. No school is. And so we need all of our schools, public, private, whatever, to be strong. Because as I tell our seniors at the beginning of every year, I need them to be really good people. And they look at me like I've got two heads, which is pretty much most of the time when the head of school's talking to seniors who are, already starting to develop senioritis on the first day of class. They look at me and they say, why? Why does that matter, Mr. Hodges? And I say, to be completely honest, because you're going to be taking care of me one day. You're going to be taking care of me. You're going to be taking care of Bowles. You're going to be taking care of Jacksonville. You're going to be taking care of our country. And that might be a little bit of a scary thought when you think through some of the high school age young drivers that you come into contact with on a regular basis. But they're going to end up in a really good spot. And that is because of the work that my faculty and staff are doing at Bowles. It's because of the work that the faculty and staff are doing at other schools in Jacksonville. And so I don't want us ever to take our foot off of the gas with education and the importance of how that impacts students' lives. I think it's easy for them to become distracted. Heck, it's easy for all of us to become distracted in today's world. There's so much that is bombarding us, but you have to have your core, your vision focused on that, where you want to be. And I think that if we encourage people to become the best versions of themselves, to become really good people, to learn how to listen to each other, it does not necessarily mean you have to agree with somebody else, but you can listen and have a conversation and share your own views. I think that we'll end up being just fine as a local community, and as a school and as a country. Really quick, promised you an update on Bowles, not because of me in any way at all, but we're in the midst of a capital campaign. The original goal was set at $50 million. We're almost up to 60 right now. If you came by any of our campuses, you would see construction taking place. There are cranes everywhere. I have parents that are like constantly arguing with me about the lack of parking spaces and how it's disrupting pick up and drop off. And I just say, look, it's a good problem to have. But the real pinnacle of that is we're building a three-story, 47,000 square foot science, math, robotics, computer science building on the river near Bowles. So if you've ever been at Bowles and you walk out of Bowles Hall, you're facing the river. Over on your left, there's a bluff that leads down towards the boat launch. That's a huge construction zone right now. This is going to be the most competitive admission year at Bowles. It's probably going to be the same in a lot of schools. Its negative effects on a lot of society was really good to independent schools. We're at our largest enrollment that we've been. We started this year at 1,752 students. We have weight pools at every one of the grades. And so if you have anybody that's ever interested in going to Bowles, have them apply early and often, because there are very limited spots. I could probably get Sergey in because he's an Olympic swimmer. But other than that, for the high school, it's really, really tight. If you look at our borders, for some of you might not know, we have 75 boarding students that live on the second and third floor of Bowles Hall, male and female. They represent 21 countries and 12 states. And if you include our day families, we represent 52 countries and over 30 languages. And the reason why I share that is a lot of times when I'm in mixed company, and sometimes people don't know that I'm affiliated with Bowles, is they'll say, oh yeah, Bowles isn't that diverse. And it's like, give me a break. First off, let's take our senior class photo that we take, before graduation every day, line that up. We're diverse, but those numbers, they speak to it. And it's not a negative on any other school. It's just, we're really proud of what we do at Bowles. Got a couple of new positions that we've hired recently, or we're hiring for a director of global learning and engagement. So if you are a very international school, as we are at Bowles, then it is important to have a program that will allow students to travel, investigate languages, community service opportunities, electives that will allow them to have a diploma distinction in that. And then I'm really excited, it just went live at the end of last week. We're looking for a director of applied technology. It's a brand new department. So spinning out of science and math, you will have a new department at Bowles, which hasn't happened in a really long time. And that person, he or she will be in charge of implementing the the linkage of the new building with all of the various departments on campus, as well as computer science courses, data analysis, robotics, stuff like that. That ties in with our portrait of graduate work. We're always looking at what our graduates need. Our mission is to prepare students for college and life. And so we want to make sure that we're not preparing them for the 1970s, which is really important. I'm sure all of you, I'd love to pick your brains in your various professions, what you're looking for as individuals. And then as Julia said, we do a little bit of athletics at Bowles. You know, it's a small thing. I had to come to appreciate what that meant. But we continue to excel, and I am most proud of all of our students, including my two daughters who both play sports at Bowles, with their ability to really follow our athletic motto, which is to be humble in victory and gracious in defeat. And so hopefully, I know that my students at Bowles and my graduates are not all perfect, but I hopefully that they're going to be representing Jacksonville and the state of Florida and the United States really well. And so we're going to continue to be bold. We're going to continue to relentlessly pursue excellence. I talk about that all the time. Every school wants to be excellent. I view excellence as perfection, and perfection is, in my opinion, impossible to achieve. But the one thing that you can control is you can control your ability to pursue it each and every day. And that's going to be different depending on what your skills are. You know, coming back to the intro, I originally went to graduate school to get a doctorate. I wanted to teach military history of the Second World War at the university level. And I ended up, you know, falling in love with teaching in independent schools, and that career path went that way. But if you talked about my pursuit of excellence, even today, you know, I'm probably higher on the military history side than I am on the music side. I also like to play the acoustic bass guitar. I don't really have an ear for music at all. I can't play walk-up music like the gentleman can over here. And so my pursuit is lower. But what I try to do when I share that with the students is to show that it's not about where you are, it's about the journey that you're on and how you're enjoying it. So I want to say thanks for having me here. It's always a privilege to speak with Rotarians. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I'll head back to campus.
Briefly, I hear that some of the gaps in education and curriculum of schools, secondary schools, is related to finance, investments, mortgages, you know, all kinds of taxes, you know, all these things that adults need to know about, budgeting. How does the Bowles address that in their curriculum?
Yeah, so we have a required freshman class, and one of the key pillar units of that is financial literacy. And that was there. I refined it a little bit, and I always, if he was here, he'd get a chuckle. One of my college roommates is a guy named David Grice, far more successful than me. But when you met him in college, he was one of those ones that opened up all the credit card applications that came through, and he viewed them as free money. Remember that? Anybody know? And David fought to get out of that for years. And so I had always known, I had parents that gave me a lot of that structure in my life, but I also realized that's not true for every student. And so that is one of the things that we do prioritize as we go through. I think it's really important. I think fiscal responsibility for anything, whether it's an organization or an individual, is utmost importance.
So before we started the meeting, we we're talking about technology, and it seems to fit in with this conversation. In higher ed, we are seeing the disruptor with ChatGPT. How is that impacting you at the K through 12 level?
Yeah, probably the same way. So we just did a professional development day on last Friday. And part of that in the afternoon is we have what is called teachers teaching teachers. And so any teacher can come up with a class that they want and to present on something that they're curious about. It's all over the board. The single most popular, jam-packed, I could not get in the door, was the class that was dealing with that. And so if anybody doesn't know, this is the AI software that allows you to throw in some keywords, and it will essentially print out a very usable document, whether it's a research paper or it is a remarks to the Rotary, which who knows, I might have done that. I've actually joked with my associate head about throwing that in there for graduation and just seeing what comes out. But you know, as a historian who ground his way through primary source documents and understanding citation and the importance of giving people credit for the work that they did, and then also having to evaluate the validity of that work, it is really scary. And so technology in general, I personally don't view it as something to be feared, but it is something to be respected and it's something to be investigated. And so we do a lot of talking especially within our English classes about the use of that. Bowles has a very strict honor code, very similar to a lot of schools, WNL and UVA. And it is important because we don't want the students to get themselves in a position where they'll get in trouble because they did something that they naively thought was okay. But it is, and it's not going away. Yes, sir.
Two things. I'm fascinated by your comments on civil discourse, because we see at the college level now, points of view that aren't popular being shouted down. And I remember in the 60s and 70s, the ACLU used to defend the right of the Ku Klux Klan to walk through the city as abhorrent as Ku Klux Klan went. They defended it because they felt that points of view need to be expressed, even if they're abhorrent like that. I mean, I'd love to know what you're doing, because these kids are going to go out, and I think the college pressure will be different than the high school level. And how do you teach them that they have to allow people to express themselves?
Yeah.
The second question is, who's your favorite World War II novel? World War II historic and also historic fiction.
Okay, so I'll start with first, historian would be my graduate advisor, Russell Wiley. Just a legend, the sole reason why I went to Temple from UVA, which is like the strangest move ever, going from UConn, Charlottesville, Virginia, when you've grown up in Hickory, to inner city Philly. That was a learning experience right there. And then historical fiction, let me give some thought, and I'll come back to you. But you raise a really good comment about the civil discourse. And so part of this, all through, during COVID, one of the things that COVID really disrupted was the perception about race and about equality and status and everything like that. And Bowles was not, immune from that. We took some hits, and we had some people that were really, some of them had some fair points. I think others it was being manipulated as a way to go after a place like Bowles, and that's okay. I mean, when you're a school like Bowles or Episcopal or anything like that, you're gonna have a target on your back to a degree. But I would say particular thanks to one of our current board members, Catherine Payton, and she and I started talking about this a couple of years ago, and she said that the key was, a place like Bowles, we want to teach kids how to think, not what to think. It's really important to me that a student understands how to advocate for themselves and to be self-confident. And she and I started talking about the single best way to do that is to develop a culture of respect. And she called it a culture of kindness. And so we actually fully implemented that this year. And so all of our programming, including in the classroom, really comes down to kindness and listening to somebody else. Again, not meaning that just because you sit in the room with somebody and you listen to them, that you suddenly are an advocate of what they believe, but you have to be able to have those conversations. And we've really seen it. I've seen it with my own daughter. She's 16 years old. I've got about a 50% chance of being right on any regular, day when I walk into that room.
That big a chance.
I know. That's true. That's probably pretty good. But I have seen her, really reflect. And I think that sometimes we expect people to immediately do it. And really what people need sometimes is the ability to process and step away on their own and then come back and have the follow-up conversation. And I think that a place like Bowles, because of our size and because of our resources, we're able to do that really well. So we give students the opportunity with their advisors to wrestle with tough topics. And that might be, going through and understanding. A big one for me is, as having a middle and a high school daughter, is understanding barriers with dating, and understanding that. I had a father that sat me down and walked me through and sort of explained to me what it meant to be a gentleman and all of that. But again, not everybody has that, and some kids don't hear. But if you give them opportunities to go through and wrestle, and some of those conversations that they had, as I hear from my daughter, were actually pretty interesting, because you had some of her friends that were boys that prefrontal cortex hasn't fully developed yet. Were asking some very strange questions, and the girls thought that was really funny. I always tell them, don't worry, the boys will catch up. It'll just take about 10 years. Yes, sir.
So in this, with technology, kids, and everything going on, and awareness only, how do you get to that fine line between bullying or that started bullying versus kids toughing each other up and growing up?
Right, great question. So unfortunately, like a lot of terms, bullying has sort of been pulled into an all-encompassing term. And so we do a lot of conversations with parents that'll come in, oh, my kid is getting bullied. Actually, they're not getting bullied. Like, we're not condoning the other student's behavior, but they were having a bad day. They were rude, they were mean, but we also have to prepare our students to be able to respond to that, not respond violently, but to respond with confidence and understand that just because somebody says something bad to you doesn't mean that you have to internalize it and carry that burden. And so really trying to refine things in a positive way. That's the kindness initiative rather than the negative side of, I don't want my students at Bowles feeling it's too easy simply because of the social media that they see and the news that is bombarding them, for them to feel that the world is all collapsing down on their shoulders. And there are a lot of bad things that are happening, but at the same time, there's a lot of good that's out there too. And so we try to constantly reframe things, not in a naive way, but in a way that gets them to focus on that good so that they can find the happiness, they can find the joy. But the bullying one is a tough one. And I've got some remarkable deans of students that work really closely with those families to hear them and to help them understand. And there are times when, we just have to agree to disagree, that, mom of the middle school son feels like her son's really getting picked on. From our analysis, we're not seeing it. The other side of it is that as I tell people all the time, probably through college, but at least middle school and high school, I only believe about half of what my kids tell me, because there's always a different side. And even with my own kids, when they feel like they've been getting picked on, there's also things that they've done that they've been rude in doing. So it's helping them understand again that it is this relationship that has to take place. Hope that helped. Yes.
You were talking about, when we're speaking to younger people, trying to talk about maybe thinking about going into teaching. Seems like teaching industry has kind of bad PR right now. All you hear about is how they have to buy their own stuff, how they're underpaid, overworked. And I was just wondering what your response to that is.
Yeah, I mean, I say come to Bowles. You're not going to have to buy your own stuff. Whether or not you're underpaid is a matter of perception. I think any person, regardless of what they're doing, could always argue that they're being underpaid. And again, that's whether you're a glass half full person or a glass half empty person. And I'm looking for people that are a glass half full, that believe in what they're doing, that believe in the kids, that, teaching is one of the, it's like parenting. I mean, I feel like I've got 1,752 kids, and some of them are driving me crazy from time to time, but when I see them, I was in California and San Francisco 2 weeks ago for alumni visits, and I met some of the kids that I had actually given the diploma to, and where they are now and what they're doing makes me really, really proud. From a salary standpoint, we, like most other schools, are trying to increase that as much as we can, trying to hold tuition. That's the thing. You can't have tuition just keep raising out. You're going to price yourself out of your clientele. Raising salaries as much as we can, and then we've doubled down on benefits, and so we have housing options that we're able to extend to people, especially people that come in from out of state. They can live in an on-campus apartment or on-campus house for a year for free while they figure out what's going on. That's a good one. We focus really hard. Our retirement match is 10%, which is unheard of for schools. And then the ability to have your son or your daughter go to school where you work, there's nothing like it. I mean, I get to see, I see my kids more, drives them crazy, but I see them more in a day than some of my college roommates see their kids in a week, 2 weeks. And so I think that ability, it's all about the intangibles. There's a lot of things. All of us can choose to do a lot of different jobs. And, I have some friends that chased after the money. They wanted to be retired by a certain age. I had other people that went into the nonprofit sector, and I just happened to get called into education, and it's what makes me happy. It certainly can be stressful at times, but when I reflect back and I truly am honest with myself, there's way more positive that has come out of this 20+ year journey that I've been on than negatives. Way in the back.
Greetings from the class of '83.
Hey, there you go.
And '85 and 2014 and 2008. Following up on the teacher thread, can you give us the description of the type of person that would be a good fit for bowls specifically as an instructor? Like educational criteria, what other type of statistical things they might need to have as part of their CV? And also, secondly, is there a place at Bowles for someone to teach that maybe has had a career in something else and then wants to later in life transition to education?
For sure. So yeah, I'll start with the second one first. For sure. We have, if you talked to me 15 years ago when I first started my hiring process as an administrator, I was most heavily focused on getting the person that knew the most content, went to the best schools, and basically could come into an interview process and make a connection with me. It was usually somebody that was a lot like me. And that was the person that ended up getting the job. And what I've realized over time is that while the content and the knowledge is important in education, I mean, certainly you have to have that. It is a heck of a lot easier for me to teach somebody history than it is for me to teach them how to be a good person. And so we have shifted considerably. I started doing this when I was associate head of school, and we pioneered a program that a lot of schools in Florida use now, where it's heavy on the emotional intelligence side. And we give an emotional intelligence inventory to all of our finalists that are there. And I am looking for people that want to connect with kids, that are not afraid. You're going to work long hours sometimes, but you also have some days that aren't as hard. But you want to go to the sporting events. You want to see them. You want to see them in and out of the classroom. And you're going to be a great communicator, reaching out to their parents, because every kid's going to have an issue at some point. Even your valedictorian that seems like he or she is cruising on the way to whatever X school, there's going to be an issue. And how you communicate with that student, I think is of the utmost importance. As a teacher, I'm not this year, but I still co-teach a leadership class on campus. And some of the other history teachers, I'm part of that department, will say, gosh, you don't ever send anybody to the dean's office. Like, does no one get in trouble in your class? And I say, yeah, I get in trouble all the time, but I just handle it differently. I handle it the way I wanted it to be handled with me, which is instead of, hey, you did something horrific and wrong, go to the dean's office and leave my site, you're kicked off the island. I wanted somebody that came and said, hey, I know you're better than this. I know what your capabilities are that you don't even know yet. And I'm going to go to bat for you, and I'm going to give you a second chance. And we're going to agree that this isn't going to happen again. And if it does, there are going to be consequences moving forward. But you're with me. And what I found is by treating students like that, treating them with respect and giving them, appropriate chances to sort of show me that they could grow and improve, I made a lot of allies. And I always told them, and I still tell them today, even when they come into my office in Bowles, there's going to be a point at some point in your life when I'm going to come and I'm going to ask a favor. And I'm going to need you to say yes.
One more question, Mary else?
I am curious as to how the proposed bill in the legislature, assuming it passes, which will have the state money flow with the student. How will that impact Bowles?
It actually won't, because we don't take any state and federal money. And I am 100% set on that because I want to maintain our ability to be independent. And we work really hard with families that would be able to bring that money to support them with financial aid. So, I think that if you're going to be an independent school, then that means being 100% independent. And, there are times when, just like all of us, where the state might be moving in a direction where we're like, yeah, that sounds really good. But I've also been alive long enough to know that things can switch. And what I want more than anything as Bowles is what I was provided with the COVID experience, which is the ability to make the best decision as the leader of Bowles and as the educator for my students.
Right. Well, thank you for joining us. And this is one of Rotary's mottos, and you're going to hear about it. It's our 4-way test.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. As we continue our focus on education, please join us next week when our speaker will be Dr. Diana Green, Superintendent of the Duval County School System. Just a reminder, board meeting to follow today's meeting. So if you please stand, please join me in the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First,
Is it true?
Second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third, will it build goodwill and better friendship? 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned?